some a little bit of presentation, a little bit of discussion around assessments. And other than that, that's our night. So this, Tad, just so you know, for those of us on the board, this is round 2. And for some of us, we have round 3 of school board duties tomorrow. So you are hitting us. We're warmed up, but we're not at the end yet. So you're hitting it right in the sweet spot, which is nice. So, all right, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce Tad and what he'll be presenting.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to not only introduce Mr. Peterson to the group, but honored to work with him and our fine partners at Heartland. I'm not sure of the length of time that our district has worked with Heartland, but it was pre-me coming to the district for sure. And I hope Mr. Peterson would echo, but it felt like the transition from working with primarily Mr. Mishler to myself and the members of the technology team have been smooth. That's how I feel. And so in the last several years, we've looked for Heartland to help us with things like Chromebooks. And we did some safety and security things at MSC, a backup server. And most recently this year, we've been talking about kind of turning the page on a new long-range plan. So we've had some discussions about what that would look like. And Mr. Peterson graciously offered to join this team here to share his knowledge and expertise. And him and I can answer questions when he's done. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Peterson. I can put that slideshow up. And I won't be able to see anyone when I do that, but I can kind of gauge where you're at in the conversation. I'll turn the slideshow accordingly, if that's all right.
Well, that sounds great. And good evening, my friends. Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Good-looking group here, and I even wore my favorite Packer shirt in preparation for the big game to come up here this Sunday. So go Packers.
Yeah.
Smart man.
Yeah. Way to get on our side right away.
Well, it's been a fun run this year, and it can only be capped off with a Super Bowl victory to make it complete, right? I will echo Mr. Bull's sentiment here in terms of the partnership, and thank you so much. Manitowoc has been just an incredible partner of Heartland's for many years. I've been a solution consultant at Heartland. It'll be 7 years in October, and I've worked with Manitowoc every one of those years. Prior to that, I think we had at least a running total of 8 years together. So if I was to do some quick math, I would assume that we've been working together for about 15, which is awesome. So I have leveraged the work that we have been doing collaboratively between Manitowoc as well as Heartland to many different customers in our ecosystem of partners throughout the state of Wisconsin. I know I'm taking kind of a long introduction here. I promise I'll give everyone else a shake too at this, but Heartland Business Systems has been around for some time, and I only work with K-12 schools. That's it. The amount of technology in schools is incredible, as everyone knows here, and what we sell is the real fancy stuff that makes it all work, right? I got two twin daughters who are sophomores in high school at Appleton North, and I got a freshman in UW Oshkosh, and my wife and I are all working from home. And when our router doesn't work or when the Wi-Fi goes down, it's total havoc, right? And you can imagine with all those students and teachers that are running around those buildings, how complicated that back end here can be. So important that we get that right. So anyways, again, Todd Peterson, solution consultant for Heartland Business Systems. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. If you wouldn't mind just for a minute, who you are, what you do, and what you believe the spread's going to be with the Packer win on Sunday.
Kathy, you go first.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Kathy Willis. I got the honor of going first, which usually it seems I go last because I'm Willis.
That was purposeful, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you, Meredith. This is my first year as a board member. I have been part of our district, though, as a substitute teacher and a teacher for about 14 years before this. And I'm just really excited to be on this board. So, of course, curriculum is really important. So I'm really happy to be on this group of people here. So, and I very much respect them and value them. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I have 2 kids, by the way. One is a software engineer who graduated from, where'd he go? Minnesota. He's in his 5th year of working now, which is crazy. He's 27. And we have a daughter, Emma, who is an educator in science down in Sheboygan. So, and she would be 24 pretty soon. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lisa Johnston. I've been on the school board since April 2018. So my 3-year term is coming up this April. I have a son that graduated from Lincoln in 2017, but I still have some pretty strong ties and connections to the district. So I hope to be reelected and stay on the board for another 3 years. Thank you.
And then I chair the committee. My name is Meredith Sauer, and I've been on the board now for 2 years. I am the token individual with a kid still in the system. I have one who graduated from the Manitowoc system, and then I have one in middle school right now. My day gig is serving in higher education. So, you know, I do K-12 education at night and higher ed during the day. So education all around. And I think that's all the committee members we have on the call. And of course, Jason and Pam, you've worked with in the past, and Mark's on the phone. I would hope you would know him.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate that. I will tell you that a large portion of the success from Heartland Business Systems over the years is a direct result of our partners, of which, again, you have been a great one. And so my hope today is to convey a little bit in terms of kind of some of the technology planning process steps that we've taken as a district, dating back to the Ken Mishler days. And, you know, looking forward into the next 5 years, we'll be adopting some of that with some tweaks. Most of the folks on this phone I know are very, it's very important that the technology works if we're trying to deliver on the curriculum side to get the achievement we're looking for with math and literacy. And I've seen many teachers frustrated and struggling, you know, when the technology doesn't work, and I know how difficult that is. And so this is a very important thing for districts, especially now, I think, with COVID and the remote learning that's happening. We've been more technology dependent, I think, than we've ever been, right? I mean, here we are, most of us in our homes, broadcasting live, having this conversation. I will tell you, I'd much rather be in person with you. I'm much more electric in person, I promise, but you know what? We have to do the best that we can, and we just are appreciative of the opportunity to add value where we can. Go ahead and flip the slide there, Jason, if you don't mind. So what I was hoping to do today is just take a little walk down memory lane in regards to what has happened in the past and what we hope to emulate in the future. And I'll say at any point in time, if there's a question, I will pause for a bit between slides, or if you'd like to add some feedback, please feel free. Death by PowerPoint, I don't think is anyone's favorite way to convey information, but I'm going to start with just a little bit of history here. So dating back to 2016, 2017, when I was working with Ken, he said, you know what, we need a plan here, right? There was a bunch of modernizations on the infrastructure side. And I don't know how many techies we have here, but I'm talking about switches and servers and firewalls and routers. How many folks here feel pretty competent in talking about that gear?
No way. Not me. I'm an end user all the way.
Yeah, my software engineer son didn't get it from my side.
Yeah, I'm not very tech savvy with that stuff either.
Well, the good news is we have Jason on the call, who's probably the most technical of all of us. And so if we really get deep into it, I'll pull out some of my networking questions, and he can he can talk about some of the software code that he's been playing with the core switches in your environment. So I'm not a technical person by nature. I'm a sales guy, right? But I had to learn the lingua. I spent a lot of time with the engineers and the smarter folks that we have that make all this gear work. I'm also an end user, so I spend my day with my laptop, right? As long as I connect the internet connection, can use the software applications that I need to do my job, I'm a happy camper. When that doesn't work, we're just like a fish out of water, aren't we? So what did that process look like, my friends? Well, it started with this, and this is where I think is kind of a differentiator in Heartland's land is outside of the pliers and the wires and those fancy boxes with some blinky lights that we call switches that are in the closets that run to a cable that goes through the wall and comes out to a data jack that we plug our computers into, right? There's bigger things we're trying to accomplish as an organization. Specifically, at a high level, what we want to understand on Heartland side is where is the school district going in the short term and the long term, and what are the challenges that you're facing? And what are those that are unique to Manitowoc? Because although there's common threads, I support Green Bay, I support Madison, I support Sun Prairie, I support a lot of school districts in this state, and there are some common denominators in terms of the challenges, but there's also some intricacies in regards to the differences. And so understanding that is very important to us, so that once we can understand what you're trying to accomplish as an organization, we can build the infrastructure to support those initiatives. Does that make sense? Okay, this is a key point here that I want to pause on, because I think a lot of our competitors or others that are very technical want to get right into these big fancy Visio diagrams and pulling out these charts and how do these pieces connect and how we make this work. But none of that matters if we don't understand what you're trying to accomplish. So back in 16, 17, we invested a dynamic amount of time with Ken, some of the folks on the leadership team there, to ask some questions, again, about long-range plans, short-term challenges. And then in addition to that, we documented what we call the current state of your environment. So at a high level, if you can imagine all the buildings that are in Manitowoc, right, all connect via fiber back to a central location in which that your primary internet connection comes in. Does that make sense? A lot of gear that makes that all work, right? Your internet connection runs from good old Madison, the state capital, all the way through to a hub, and then it comes in over there, in your primary building, and then expands out on your fiber network to the buildings themselves, to the closets themselves, to the classrooms themselves, yada yada. So we document all of that, and then we develop what's called a target state, meaning, well, here's where we are today, right? Here's where we want to go. And what does that look like from a technical perspective? We do some gap analysis to find out where we are. Could we repurpose some things to save some money? And then we build what we call a co-authored execution strategy. This is very important. It's not a Heartland strategy, right? Again, this is a customized plan that's co-authored between the parties at Manitowoc and Heartland to say, hey, here's what we're trying to do, Ted, right? Give us some smart people here that can make this work, and then we'll invest in that. The other piece of this, which comes along the way, which is also very important, is the financial arm piece of this. So some districts will leverage some different means in order to make these purchases. Sometimes we have referendum dollars that become available. We'll use some building project dollars to become available from a capital spend perspective. Some folks can carve out some dollars out of their operational budget and working with folks like Ken and the business office to find out how we can do those types of things. Others will leverage different funding programs that are available to offset some expense, such as E-rate. Has anyone heard the USAC or E-rate before? No? Okay. Just as a funding mechanism that's available. Way back when you got your phone bills, the good old dial tone phone bills, right? There was a little fee on that phone bill called the Universal Service Fund fee, and it was probably like 24 cents. You probably paid them. Thought, what the heck is this for, right? You just wrote the check and off we go. Well, everyone nationwide pays that fee to the phone company, and what the phone company did years ago is allocate those dollars as a means to pay back school districts to offset some of the cost of their phone bills. And as of late, they've redirected those funds towards technology, more specifically on the infrastructure side, because connectivity, internet connectivity, is at an all-time highest usage that it's ever been. And most school districts can't afford it by themselves, right? So there's all these things that we can use from a financial arm perspective, along with budget dollars from the district. And if we can't do it all at once, which is fine, we move into a phased approach. And we take a look at priority and how we build that out over time. Does that make sense? I'm really giving you the shorthand of this process. This is probably a 3-month effort all in. So I'm definitely not doing it justice in terms of the commitment of time relative to the folks on your side that helped us with that, and definitely not from the folks on our side. It was probably a couple 100-hour engagement from the folks on the Heartland side of the house, right? And at the end of that whole thing, what we did is we built, similar to what Jason is showing here, a pyramid, right? A technology infrastructure that enabled folks to do whatever it is that they were trying to do at that time. Now, this particular diagram for non-technical folks, I probably spend the most time with, right? Because if you look at this pyramid here, and it's built here intentionally, you have the base of that pyramid being the infrastructure stuff that we sell from Heartland's perspective, and that's what we do really well. Then we have the services platform and the applications platform. And I'm guessing the folks on this call care most about the application side of the house, right? I mean, what are we using in the classrooms today? We might have some smart boards, right? Got some Chromebooks in the hands of kiddos, some Windows devices, and a whole bunch of applications that we're using to teach these youngsters today, right? All that stuff at the top is the most important for what you do, but none of it works if we don't do the bottom section right. Does that make sense? My router goes down at home, my wireless crashes, and now all of a sudden my kid's iPhone doesn't work, their Chromebook doesn't work, their iPad doesn't work, right? And life is just, what's going on here, right? And so the better we can do about solidifying a stable infrastructure from the bottom with all those parts and pieces, switches, servers, firewalls, cabling, all that fancy stuff, the more inclined it is that the technology is going to work for you and the users with the applications. Does that make sense? So it's a big deal. And it's actually, relative to the spend of the school district, a relatively small percentage in perspective of the big picture. Go ahead and flip the slide if you would, Mr. Bull. This is an example in terms of when we were done with this exercise, we calibrated cost over a 5-year span in terms of district investment, right? And what we looked at was, hey, of all the stuff that we have to do here, right? And we build that out here, what percent of this stuff is from that spend? And what's interesting here is if you take a look at this, the two biggest sections of that pie, it might be a bit hard to read, especially for folks a touch older like myself here, but 44%, if you look at the bottom part of that chart there, right, we're referring to it as endpoint. Did I lose you guys?
You did, which is ironic.
Sorry about that.
You froze.
Did I? Okay, yeah. So I'm not sure where I left off. Anyways, the endpoint, as you can see, the greatest percentage there is based on the computers, the workstations, the laptops, and all the things that you guys use on a day in, day out basis, right? The second largest percentage of that chart, 29%, is what's being used in the classroom from a classroom technology perspective. Projectors, screens, smart boards, right? Document cameras, fill in the blank. There's all kinds of stuff that's going on there, right? So that's a significant amount of that pie chart. And the stuff that is left is the infrastructure or the base things that we have to sell on Heartland side and that we have to consume on your side in order to make those things work. So the illustration here, I think, paints a picture in terms of the significance of that investment to ensure that the remaining 44, 70, 73, who we got there? Math's never been my strong suit here. Of course, I got a bunch of educators on the phone, right? And I got to pull up a calculator to do some simple math, but 44, 29, 73, right? 73% of that total spend has nothing to do with the products that Heartland Business System sells. And I use that in talking to non-technical folks so they can understand the significance, of that investment and the amount of effort that goes into strategizing on how to do that effectively, right? And you could tell me, but I think at the end of the day, in addition to the technology, you have a very strong advocacy for the folks that are on your team, such as Jessica and Andy and Jason. And you got some very talented people in your district that also add value in making sure all that stuff on the bottom end works, as well as the stuff on the top end. And I'll tell you, I work with a lot of school districts, and Andy and Jessica are amazing at what they do. You're very fortunate to have them. Jason's okay, but those two are pretty cool.
That's kind of funny.
So anywho, I appreciate the opportunity to present and hopefully share a little bit in terms of the planning exercises that we've gone through in the past and what we're looking to do here as we move forward into the future. With that said, I'll pause for a minute here and see if I've driven any questions or thoughts from the group.
I did notice that the planning went out until 2022. So are there new outcome foundations, all of those inner workings, foundations that need to be put in place still in the next year? Like, what is that plan extended through 2022?
Excellent question. Yeah, and so I'll let Jason add some color to this statement, but we've actually begun the process of looking forward into the next 5 years. This particular year, from an investment standpoint, there is not a lot that we have to do on the infrastructure side. However, what we want to do is we want to make sure to regurgitate up to the business office and the folks on the leadership side of your district to know that, hey, there's some big ticket items that are coming down the pike. And we have to go through this planning exercise again to ensure that we right size the solution for the next 5 years.
I would just echo that. I think we worked very aggressively in the early stages of that plan. I feel like this year was kind of a built-in planning year. So that's really those discussions have started, brought us here tonight, and we'll continue those discussions and really be in a position to present the business office, Mr. Holzman, and others, kind of the next series of 5-year plans. So I think the final year is more of a planning year than an execution year.
Okay.
So is this something we have to do RFPs or bids for when that contract expires, or is it just assumed that we're able to move forward with that?
Yeah, we'll put some of the work out for bid for sure. Not the contract per se, but the work would go out for bid. But Heartland really sets us up for that long-term planning, but also supporting the work when the bids come in as well.
Okay.
Could you guys give us some examples of some of those large ticket items so we can become more aware of what the future holds?
Sure. This is certainly not my expertise, but we have closets in every building that house those servers.
Okay.
Lincoln High School serves as the hub. Most recently, we put a backup server at MSC, and that was a protective measure. As Mr. Peterson has mentioned, all those access points and routers, I don't think they're necessarily high-ticket items, but we need a lot of them, right? And those are all connected by wiring. So it's really that infrastructure behind the scenes, that base of that pyramid that we looked at, that allows for the classroom work to go smoothly and fluidly.
Okay. That was one of my questions too, is do we have a backup system? So you just naturally answer that. That's
Yes.
because, as you said, in this day and age, we're reliant on our technology. What would we be doing without it? So
Yes.
Yeah, and I will add to that in that your district in particular has done a phenomenal job of building in some redundancy to the system, right? So I'm not going to go too far down the technical explanation of this, but because of the reliance and the dependency on technology, we have to have some redundancy in the system so that if there is a failure, that it can seamlessly fail over to something that would pick up the pieces so the user wouldn't have an impact, right?
okay.
The other part of this that's challenging, though, is that we want to do that while still being economically responsible, right? And so that's the other challenge that all school districts have. Is we're not a business, right? We don't, is it different when I work with some of my commercial customers, which I very versus public sector, because public sector actually has more demand than the commercial sector. They have lesser resources. And when I say resources, I mean both financial resources and people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Jessica came over from the private sector into public sector. And I'll tell you that some of the businesses that we support, right, that have a similar amount of technology in their environment like you guys have, are staffed with roughly 30 to 40 people. You have 2, right? So that's the other part of this, is where sometimes we might spend a touch more on a little bit better technology because we don't have people to turn the wrenches on it. We just need it to work, right? And so that's the other part of this process, which also then gets vetted out on those RFPs that you refer to, because of the fact that you are public sector and that you tap into some federal funds to help offset the expense of some of this spend. All of that has to go through a rigorous federal government approved process with the USAC in terms of a competitive bidding process. And the result of that is someone gets the award. It might be Heartland, it might be someone else, but someone gets that award. And so there's a lot of scrutiny that goes into conserving dollars on this while being mindful of trying to build in the redundancy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Kathy or Lisa, any more questions for Tad?
No, it was a good presentation. Thank you for coming to the meeting and showing us all this.
Yeah, it's nice to learn about some of those things that go on behind the scenes that we don't even like. We think about it, like you said, when things go down or we have issues, but we don't always know all of the background that goes with that stuff. So I appreciate you being here tonight.
Yeah, I also appreciate the fact that you're looking toward the future. I think that's something we need to make sure we take care of, right? Is not just what's happening right now, but down the road. So yeah, that's great. Thank you.
No, thank you. Jason did all the work. I was just here as eye candy.
Mr. Peterson, thank you. Appreciate it very much. We're going to talk about assessments, so you're welcome to stay, but don't feel obligated, please. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Tad. Nice meeting you.
Very nice to meet you guys. You're doing tremendous stuff over there. Those students in your community are so blessed to have you guys, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care, friends. I am going to drop.
All right.
Bye now.
Well, as Jason said, the next thing on our agenda is to walk through what assessments are going to look like for the spring semester. And my assumption is that that's a Pam thing, but I could be wrong.
You're right. You're right.
Okay.
I just wanted to take an opportunity to kind of give you an overview because it is different than it has been in the last few years. And so I wanted to let you know some things that we're doing this year that we haven't done previously and likely, hopefully, won't do when we get back into the normal sequence of events, you know, as we get into more traditional model. But the first thing, and I won't read, you had the chart that kind of gave you the overview. I wanted you to be able to see the dates just from the lens of knowing what's kind of going on in the world of our staff and our students over the course of the spring. As you can see, we always typically call spring our, you know, our testing palooza. And it's usually a little less intense than it will be this year, but spring is always a time when there's a lot of assessment going on. The change for this year that probably, there's a couple big ones. The first one is access testing typically would be done starting in December. So we do December to January, and that is for our English language learners. It's actually a federal assessment. It's not we administer it through the direction of the state, but it's a federal assessment because of it comes through that English language learner lens. And so we are going to administer that starting in February. And that means that we will have to assess, we have 200 plus EL students across the district, almost close to 300, and we will administer that assessment to every one of those students. And I should point out that all assessments have to be administered. State does not have the ability for us to administer them remotely. And so therefore, even our virtual learners will be asked to come in and participate in assessment. From the standpoint of, you know, parent decision making, there's a little bit of a difference between a federal assessment and a state assessment. A federal option for parents. It's just the way that the assessment is presented. So we do, you know, let parents know that when we inform them of the assessment. And so that access testing really is all students who are identified EL are expected to test. For our statewide assessments, there is a parent opt-out option like there was way back when we had the WKCE. And so that's a little bit different. So we'll start out with access testing. And again, that will be starting in February. They lengthen the window a little bit. So we have February through April, which is nice because it is a lot of students and we have we have 13 individuals who are trained to do that assessment across the district. So our EL teachers spend a lot of time hanging out with kids during that time, getting them through all of these assessments. And they take assessments in 4 areas: speaking, listening, writing, and reading. And so there's 4 different components to that test that they have to take. Then we get into some of our statewide testing, and one of the big differences this year is this is the first year our juniors will take the ACT online. It's been around for a few years. I think last year was the first time that districts kind of fully got on board. They did a little bit of a piloting program as a state prior to that. But this year they've offered the opportunity for paper or online, and we elected to do the online just for the convenience in terms of not having to shuffle a bunch of papers around. It gets to be a lot when Lincoln has to navigate all those test booklets and resources and make sure they all get inventoried when they come in, and then when they're collected from kids, keeping tabs on them till they send them back out to ACT. And we already use online systems for Forward and Aspire, so it's not something that's unfamiliar to the kids. That's been around for a few years. So ACT has opened up then some windows for us. I'm not sure if this is going to be a permanent plan, but it is, at least for this year, that they are giving kind of 2 weeks, and they do a Tuesday through Thursday of 2 weeks for you to assess. Typically, the assessment would be given, you got 1 day for the initial test date and a second day for the makeup test date if you're going to do paper testing. For the online testing, because they want us to be able to have enough technology available for students to cycle through, which thankfully, as we just heard, we're well equipped for that, but then also to allow in this current environment for cohorts to be set up. So what happens is we have March 9th through the 11th and the 16th through the everybody test time. And during that time, we will have different cohort groups go through that assessment. It is a 1-day assessment. So if I start the test, I have to finish it all in 1 day, unless I have approved accommodations from ACT. And so they'll have those days, they'll create their groups and cycle their groups through. And it's about a 4-hour test yet for students to take. So it's pretty intense during that time. And then they've also put into place then what is pretty traditional, a makeup window, which means if we don't catch them the first round, we catch them the second round and we get them in. And then because of COVID in years past, it was because of weather, the state has really put into place a kind of a backup date. They call it an emergency test date. So if for some reason, previous years, if you had a snow day on test day, you just move everything to that your opportunity to assess. And so for this year, they've added, again, a little bit of a bigger window for those online assessments and have said, if you have an extreme kind of COVID situation where you've got a large number of kids out for both of those other windows, you can use that opportunity to continue to get some students tested. So we should be in pretty good shape to get our junior class assessed. Those scores, when the students take the assessment, they use those scores for college entrance as they want. The nice thing about it is it's free. If they do it on their own and want to take the assessment on their own, they have to pay. I think it's about $40 some for that. But this is a free opportunity. So we encourage all of the students to, do their best and take advantage of the opportunity that they can have their scores reported to at least 4 institutions. So even if I'm somebody who's not really thinking college is in my future, oftentimes we'll just encourage them to, send your scores to LTC. Send your scores to the UW Green Bay Manitowoc campus. Send your scores to Lakeland University. Trying to get them to think about just, it's okay to have, maybe some local options that, it certainly might be available to you that you don't know. And really reminding them that there are times when some of these institutions are willing to work with students who maybe struggle a little bit to help them get on board to be successful in college. And they never know what down the road might hold for them. So we do encourage the students to take advantage of that opportunity to have those scores sent for free.
So Pam, because they're taking that exam online, is that something they can do from home, or do they still need to come in and do that in a proctored environment, or is the proctoring online?
None of our assessments are allowed taken at home. They all have to be done in a proctored environment. The rigidity of the ACT remains. I mean, it's pretty strict. Yeah.
Well, I know, in my world, they're doing GED testing online, but they have paid proctors that watch eyes, watch movement. So I didn't know if that was that kind of a situation, but that it makes sense with so many students all doing it in a window to do it in a harnessed fashion.
Yeah.
My question is, are the classrooms mandated for certain setups also, just so that we don't have, I know we're 6 feet apart, but even so, are we using dividers? Are we having all the computer space outward? Are we looking at that kind of structure for them?
Actually, Kathy, with the Chromebooks, all of these assessments can be taken on our Chromebooks. So there isn't a need for the desktop stations. So it really, and it's funny that you asked that, because even previous, when kids would take the paper test, they still had to be 3 feet by 3 feet. So 3 feet from my partner this way and 3 feet from head to head. So now we just extend it. It's 6 feet, right? Until we're out of this pandemic situation. And so it's really not something different. And that's why we'll do the cohorts. It'll be a smaller number of students in a testing situation, but it's a lot of the same practices. All the students face the same direction. There isn't an option. They do allow a little bit of flexibility with dividers between, so like a study carrel kind of situation. We don't really typically have that in most of our buildings. So we just say all the kids facing the same direction, and it works. And then, the proctors are trained to monitor so they do their walk around just to make sure everything is secure. And I got to be honest with you, even in my experience previously, working as an administrator in a high school, the kids rise to the occasion. They just do an absolutely fabulous job. So some of those things that we kind of worry about on the day-to-day kinds of issues, the kids really respond well because they know that this is an important thing for them. And if they take it seriously, it could have a pretty significant impact on their future. So I've not really had the experience where we've had too many situations where kids really don't do their best and try and follow the rules, really follow and engage in what the expectations are. So, but that's a great question.
Okay.
Pam,
So
are we offering any kind of ACT prep to help the students prepare for the test? I know when my son was in high school, they were offering some ACT prep, what to expect, how to plan for the test, stuff like that.
Lisa, our high school folks take care of a lot of that. So they do the ACT prep. A lot of our department leaders have looked at the ACT and certainly incorporate some of those things into the work that they do on a daily basis. So getting kids familiar with the types of questions they might be asked, the depth of a question. I do know too that I've provided some resources to we have school assessment coordinators. I'm the district assessment coordinator, and every building has a school assessment coordinator. And so I've provided them with some resources to share out with families. For ACT, there's something called the ACT Academy, which is a free online opportunity, and families can sign up and have their children participate. It's kind of a individualized opportunity to take an assessment and then get some training modules. And actually it goes down, I want to say, to second or third grade. So there's quite a bit of opportunity for them to gain some additional training through that. And then I know that some of the kids participate, and the counselors put out some opportunities to participate in like these ACT ZAP trainings and some of those kinds of things. So our high school staff do a nice job of really making sure students are exposed to those opportunities and trying to kind of direct them to making sure that they're as prepared as possible. But like I said, really trying to incorporate too some of these skill sets into the coursework that they do on a daily basis, so it doesn't feel like they're cramming for an exam as much as they're just really kind of familiar with how those types of questions are going to be asked. So
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So that'll be the junior class, and then we get into our forward testing. And then ACT Aspire. So forward is for our elementary and middle level students. And then a 10th grade takes their social studies test through there. And then our ACT Aspire is 9th and 10th grade. And so both of those are online assessments. And they're not a lot different this year than they have been previously, other than the windows are longer. So we have a little bit more time to get them in. And so we will continue to use some of those same systems, setting up cohort groups and working the students through. All of our building leaders have got the schedule, so they're starting to map out, when are we going to start this process, and then we'll start communicating with families just about the assessments, and then eventually get to the point where they're communicating out the schedule, so families know about when are their children going to. So there's not a lot different on those fronts. And then the last one is the dynamic learning maps, and that is for our alternate assessment students. We're allowed about 1% of our population to take an alternate assessment, and that would be for students who are significantly intellectually disabled. And those students are identified by the IEP team. There's some criteria that the state asks teams to consider when they're identifying students to take that assessment. And then we flag them in our information system as alternate assessment students who are going to participate in this assessment instead of the forward or the ACT suite assessments. Their scores do get figured in and calculated in to the overall picture of our ELA and math performance. So those we call them the DLM, that scoring does factor in. And it's because of the fact assessed based upon some alternate standards that the teachers use when they're instructing with those students. So it's kind of aligned to some extent to the state standards, but it's just at a different level that they're looking at some of the concepts and things. So, and then the last part of that is, as per usual, we are required to administer a reading readiness assessment once per year. Typically we do it in the fall, but this year we elected to wait until the spring just to see if maybe we'd have a better opportunity to be in person to do it versus trying to figure out how to bring kids back during a virtual situation. And so we will administer the PALS assessment to our 4K through 2nd grade students. And that's, again, just a reading readiness assessment. The nice thing is it gives us some predictors of who is on track to continue to develop those literacy skills, those early literacy skills at a high level, and who may need some additional support to get there. So.
Pam, I do have a question for you. What's typically when we're testing, and I think it's ACT, I could be wrong about that, of course, but when the time is for testing, typically high school students, the rest of them have that time off in school. Given that we're finally kind of going back and having some face-to-face, are we still allowing those days off for students? Like, how is that playing out right now with the testing?
It's a great question, and I just by chance had an opportunity to talk to our high school person from prior this week, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to answer your question. But it actually, Kathy, is a great question for this year because we did a plan A and a plan B. Plan A is that they will test different part of the building while the other kids are working in that. The challenge is we need staff to supervise. And so they're going to train all of their staff. And I've really encouraged all of our building assessment coordinators to train everybody, because anybody and everybody who could administer an assessment should know how to do it just in case we need backup, because we don't know what this is going to look like this spring. Right. So they're going to train everybody, and they're going to try to target, junior teachers with junior students to take the assessment, so they're not impacting the other instruction as much as possible. That's plan A. Plan B would be that they may need to do some virtual learning for groups of students if they have to pull in teachers from other grade levels, to help support the assessment, just not by not knowing, who might need to be out of the building at any point in time. So the nice thing is we're very familiar with how to do virtual learning. So if we need to flip the classroom for a day and say, hey kiddos, here's your assignments are going to be online for today. We'll come back face to face, or come back, via Google Meets, live meets tomorrow. Just today, do these kinds of things so you're ready for tomorrow when we come back together. So they're trying to be creative, but making sure that they have good plans, because the big thing is we have a tighter time frame for these assessments than we do for some of and especially ACT. So they have to have the bodies when they need them. It's not, you don't have the flexibility to say, well, we'll just skip today and we'll do it tomorrow, because it doesn't work that way with that assessment. So they have done a nice job of thinking about that and coming up with some good plans for that.
That's great. I don't think it would be well received from the community if we all of a sudden have this large block of time off just because we were testing one group of people. And, honestly, I think we all recognize that we need to have those kids learning every chance we get right now. So that's good news. So that was plan A. What's plan B?
Plan B is to do, if they can't get the junior level teachers to work with the junior level students in a separate part, then plan B is to pull in others. So they might have to pull in a senior teacher to say, that day, because your teacher's going to be administering the assessment. So, maybe they have AP, psychology senior level teacher who they, say we gotta have you to help administer this junior level exam. And so therefore those students would learn virtually for that day. They'd be given some work to do so they can continue to learn, and they would just catch up with their or those live meets kind of thing the next day, or when that teacher's back available from testing. So
Gotcha. Great.
trying to think of all angles this year because it's going to be a little crazy.
It's a challenge.
Have that fluidity and that flexibility. So that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad my question was timely.
Exactly. I'm glad, because I was like, oh, I don't know if I'd been able to answer it otherwise, but and I just really wanted you to know, because it is going to be just so different this year. It's just a little bit crazier than usual, and so I think it's just helpful for you to kind of have a sense as you're hearing, things from classrooms and from schools, what's going on, and hearing some of the numbers, as we kind of bring kids back and adults back, and you're hearing some of the data on how our health is doing in our schools. You kind of get a sense of what the impact could be on some of these things. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions in regard to assessment?
No.
Okay, so that is the end of our, I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
No, I had no other comments. Thank you.
Okay. All right, that is the end of our agenda. If anybody has anything else, we could entertain that. And if not, I would definitely entertain a motion to adjourn.
I don't know if this is appropriate to bring this up or not right now, but I'm going to. Just food for thought. Mark actually mentioned the summer, and I don't know if you guys are the ones to bring this up to, but I really feel like we need to look at would be considered long-term or short-term plan right now for our summer school program, and trying to buffer some of the learning issues that we've had for this last year for the summer. And if we can, now is not too early in my book, to start talking about can we offer some extended academic classes this summer? And I know that we would have issues with bringing teachers in, but I just thought food for thought to start thinking in those terms, because I think there's going to be a lot of students who may need that. So and certainly if we could offer something like that, it would be a positive.
I can tell you that Stacy O'Polly, the principal at Madison, oversees summer programming. And I have the honor to work with Stacy and the leadership team. And that leadership team, I think, takes off. They don't meet in September, but we meet every other month.
Oh, okay.
So we've been meeting since October. And Stacy has done a wonderful job of bringing in middle school and high school representatives. And she really speaks for the elementary. But we'll have a full gamut of enrichment opportunities at K-12 level.
Okay.
We will have some bridge, they're calling it, middle school bridge opportunities that are academic focused this year. We'll have a middle school transition program at the middle level for incoming students. Lincoln is investigating and planning to have a summer term where they'll have new academic offerings.
That'd be awesome.
We'll have a full slate of athletic offerings. And Lincoln has traditionally done a transition week as well. So Stacy does a wonderful job and just encouraging to add to what has already been a robust program. We're looking to add academic offerings, especially at the middle and high school. I think that was a key area, and we're looking to do that this year.
Yeah, that's good news.
Jason, do you, the feedback that you're receiving, our teachers, have they been able to stay on track with meeting all the core standards for each grade? From a parental point of view, I feel like my kid's getting through what he should be getting through, but I don't know overall, or is that the feedback that you're receiving? We're not missing big gaps of standards by any stretch of the imagination, right?
Right. I would say that the high school and middle school leaders, building leaders, did a phenomenal job working with their groups, their teacher groups, early in the year to identify those power standards. And are really going all in on making sure every student has the opportunity to demonstrate their achievement of those standards across all content areas. And our elementary folks have done the same, and working to revise the scope and sequence every time we change models, right? Lori Williams, for example, is working with a group right now to again revise our scope and sequence to allow it to reflect the achievement of those power standards. We'll make sure we can do it in a fashion that is good for students and staff. So the answer is yes, absolutely.
Awesome. That has been my experience, but I wanted to make sure that that was also the feedback that's coming back. You know, I know at one point there was a concern about people, students receiving, I think it's an ends, like it wasn't approached, right? And that was a concern on report cards. And my thought was, well, it's been like that every year for first quarter. As long as I remember my kids being in school, there's always been a significant amount of ends at the beginning, and then towards the end, of course, all that clears up as things unfold throughout the year. It's just that we put those standards all in the report card every single quarter. They are present whether they're approached or not. So I guess I wanted to make sure that was kind of that feeling across the board that things are being reached. We're not seeing significant gaps. It's we're trudging through. It's just in a different way.
Absolutely. And we talked about that report card piece, and I think it really boiled down to a communication. So our elementary folks redid a half sheet or a full sheet, kind of explaining that process and what those ends mean and where we are with those power standards. And that information will go out with the report card, so that will be mailed soon here.
Great. So that's a great way of remedying that. All right. Okay.
I would say too, it's important to just keep in mind our teachers are the ones who they're digging in, you know, and we were talking about that in our department about when you look, Lori had kind of pulled out the scope of what we're asking teachers to do in the amount of time, and the fact that they're rocking it to the extent that they are is pretty amazing. And sometimes we kind of forget that part of it because, you know, we just say, okay, here's what you got to do, and you do it, and not realizing like there's just a lot for them, but they're digging in and they're doing a great job, and they're very focused on staying the course, right? The passion to help students achieve has not dwindled at all throughout this, and so it's pretty amazing to see the work that's being done in our schools, and you know, and across the virtual classrooms that we have going right now.
Yeah, at every turn, we're getting information from parents who are saying, like, we don't like what's going on, but our teachers are fabulous, you know, and it might be more about kids just not engaging themselves and turning it on, that kind of thing. But I don't think I've heard any complaints about a real the teacher aspect of it. It's most people are they're killing it, right? So
yeah.
Wonderful.
They're amazing, dedicated professionals, without a doubt.
Yeah, they've certainly risen to the occasion. So we could say cheers here right now. I hope they're all listening.
I tell you, yeah,
right.
These folks deserve all the kudos we can give them. That's for sure.
Yeah,
without a doubt.
So
I have one other question about summer school. The summer school academics, is there going to be some way to identify students that are really in need of the summer school academic program to catch them up somehow? I mean, how are we going to identify these students that need that help?
Yep, at the elementary level, we have always had the academies. So I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, actually, but so the first 3 weeks of summer school will be enrichment, and that could be Legos, and it could be cooking, could be a wide variety of more enrichment activities. And then the elementary will have 3 weeks of, I think it's 3 weeks, of academy, and that is really academic focused, math and literacy. So as early as parent-teacher conferences in the spring here, we begin to communicate that opportunity and especially encourage our staff does a wonderful job of encouraging the students that really need that extra push to enroll in those academies. And then at the middle level, just had a meeting this morning talking about that bridge program. And that would again be a focus on academics for, I believe, 3 weeks, Monday through Thursday for 3 weeks in a row, focusing on math and literacy and some STEAM and leadership activities. And again, we'll do the communication rollout and encourage some folks to really consider that opportunity. And at the high school, we're constantly talking about how many courses that are being incomplete right now, and what are the strategies that we can implement now to allow kids to demonstrate their learning, and then how do we grab them and give them that same opportunity during the summer as well.
Okay.
Has any consideration been given to like reducing the enrichment time to possibly 2 weeks and going 4-week academic? So that those basics are covered.
Yeah, we've played with the calendar over the last couple of years, and we've used July 4th, wherever it falls, as kind of a week to take a break. So I believe this year just fits naturally where enrichment is pre 4th of July. We give a break for that week, and then there's 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. I apologize, I can't remember all these things, but 3 weeks of academy. And we've changed the academy. It used to be the extension of the current year, and now it's feeding forward to the next year. So it's really preparing students for what's coming and also reducing that summer slide.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking time-wise. I guess, there's so many students who are going to need to play catch-up. Is it possible? I'm just asking, can we think about that? Just increasing that academic period. And I'm thinking and decreasing enrichment only because I'm sure it's about the numbers game, right? And paying our people. We're already talking about asking for a referendum. So I can't see necessarily extending everything by an extra week or two and having to pay all those people. But if we could take, I hate to say, was it rob Peter to save Paul kind of thing? Like if we take away some of the enrichment time and give it to the academics, I just can't see that hurting people. I think that might be it's a thought, right? So,
absolutely. Yes, thank you.
I think I just add the balance always is summer school is a voluntary program.
Right.
And so the challenge is, even though we're talking about enrichment, there's learning going on in those courses. And sometimes the learning is going on is not known. Like if I'm cooking, right, I have to use the strategies of, what are the measurements and how do I half or double? And the other strategy is that on a common year, we are reimbursed to the tune of about 180 FTE. And last year that number was maybe 21. Does that sound right, Jason? So the more kids who are engaged in a summer school program, the more minutes we can count, and the state then will allow us to use that as our third Friday count FTE. So that's how we typically pay for the services, and the more the merrier. So yeah, I do think that there might be some opportunities. The biggest challenge for us historically has always been 6-12. I don't remember last year's numbers, but in the past we've had thousands of kids who are established in the kindergarten through grade 6. The 6-12, again, it's hard to get through that mindset of summer school is for kids who failed coursework, and we want to extend that to there's some good learning opportunities, and so we will work hard. We do need to, and I know our folks who are working on that will work hard on getting the targeted kids who need to be there, and some opportunities for kids who want to continue their learning. So
I think that becomes about communication and promotion, because we've talked about this recently about how many parents we have engaged now, more than probably maybe ever before, right? So to keep them engaged, and there might be even more parents who are saying, you really should go to summer school. But I think if we need to promote that and communicate that and saying, hey, this is an opportunity to beef up your summer.
I believe they all received a message recently. I don't know. I could reach out to Meredith maybe and say, did you, I think last week maybe there was a summer school message.
Yeah. Yep. We got our first email blast about that, kind of outlining what the week structure will be. I mean, certainly not the nitty gritty at this point, but this is the week that the athletic stuff will be held. And this is, some of those other blocks of time. So yep, that message is definitely getting out there. But Mark is right in respect to you want to make it attractive enough so that you have kids walking in the door, which means sometimes that learning needs to be a little bit
pretty
more subtle, right?
Right.
And so I totally get that. And I think we also need to recognize, hopefully by that time, we're kind of crawling out of COVID land. Most likely, a lot of people are going to be doing things more together, and that may not be as top of mind as perhaps we may want it to be, with potentially some newfound freedom of moving around and doing other things. So, there's a lot to temper and balance, and I'm glad that you all are working on that. Stacy I have the utmost respect for Stacy, and I have no doubt that she and the rest of the team will figure out a fantastic way to make sure that messaging is appropriate and that they get kids in the door. Summer school has built and built and built, and it's kind of at its heyday right now. It's been fun to watch that building throughout the years.
Yeah.
So.
I just called up the schedule so I can speak to it more accurately, but enrichment for K-12 will start June 21st, and it'll be 3 weeks with 1 week break for that July 4th.
Okay.
And then academies, K-5 will be for 4 weeks. So I was right. So July 12th through August 6th. And then we'll have 2 weeks of middle school transition and 1 week of high school transition. And then again, that middle school bridge program and some of those summer term high school courses will be offered throughout the summer as well.
Cool.
All right. So Kathy, not to encourage you, but you are the only other committee member. So if you wanted to make a motion to adjourn, we can go ahead and do that. And certainly if there's things that you all want to see on the next agenda, certainly let me know that so that we can build that on the agenda and have Jason and Pam be able to prepare. I know sometimes we push them into winging it a little bit, but we do have, things are fluid, and so I appreciate their willingness to do that. So Kathy, it's all you.
Yeah, so I can hold you guys hostage, but I'll make that motion to adjourn.
And I will second that motion. All in favor?
You and I both.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Well, take care, everybody. See some of you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.